Welcome to the Art of Marketing Operations, a Taylor podcast. Here you can grow your knowledge about marketing operations, listen to ideas and strategies to help you scale, grow, and optimize your efficiency, drive your speed to market, and enrich your work life. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Art of Marketing Operations, a Taylor podcast. I'm Glenn Bottomley, and today my guest is Julie Volpi, Director of Marketing Operations at Tractor Supply Company, the largest rural lifestyle retailer in the United States, servicing the needs of recreational farmers, ranchers, and all those who enjoy living the rural lifestyle for more than 80 years. Thanks for joining me today, Julie.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, Julie, you have a fascinating background and an interesting path which has brought you to marketing operations. For example, I know that when we chatted before, you started working in print, which of course is near and dear to my heart, working for Taylor Corporation. So can you share a little bit more about how your career started as a print category specialist, print production manager, and what are some of those formative lessons that you gained in your early career?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I don't know how fascinating of a path it is, but it was indeed a path. Coming out of college, clearly my degree was not in marketing operations. It was a history degree. But when I, left college, came to my small hometown, my first job to just start making some cash was at a printing company. Print was very heavy in the town I grew up in. My dad actually owned a small printing company after he left one of the bigger ones in town. So I started working there, knowing that I didn't want to reside in my small town for the rest of my life. I've always known I wanted to live elsewhere. I moved to St. Louis, Missouri for a print buying opportunity. I worked for Sears Portrait Studios, CPI Corporation. They were a licensee of Sears. So I was a print buyer for that company. That evolved into eventually being a category specialist for a marketing supply chain company, and got me kind of into that marketing operations perspective. We were account managers for, Fortune 500 companies who managed their print and distribution of all of their marketing collateral, the storing of it, all of it. So from there, I ended up becoming the account management side of that. And one of the companies that we were supporting was Tractor Supply. And I got the opportunity to go and manage that account and move from the St. Louis area to Nashville. And I worked as that support person on site at Tractor Supply for a couple of years, after which Tractor Supply had a position open up internally. It just worked out that it kind of fit what I do, and that's where we got into this road of where I am now. It started very heavily in print production, but as we all have seen, right, print's dwindling to a degree. It'll never go away. I believe that it'll never go away, but it has dwindled. So it really started to expand my purview at Tractor Supply and got us to where really now my team and I are supporting the overall marketing department from an operations perspective and not just a print production perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then from a print perspective, when you think about, print, think about digital, what has been some of the sort of the best takeaways, when you think about, what generally we call physical marketing impressions, things like, kits and signage or cards or point of sale or materials or direct mail, et cetera. What's been your experience on how you blend sort of physical and digital marketing impressions?
So for me, it becomes all about process, right? It is so many of the inputs for the execution on either model are the same. So it's really just dialing in what the process is and how you hone it to the different avenue of where you're going, because so many of the inputs are exactly the same. So when we switched at Tractor Supply from a print heavy circular model to going more digital messaging, all of the inputs that we used for that print, very manual production process are the same as is needed for the digital side. It's just how we then hone it in and get it into the different platforms. So process evaluation is key.
Is really key there. And then are you finding that, like, in other words, when you think of the physical marketing impressions, how are you sort of integrating that or making that decision? Like you say, you're shifting more digital. How is print playing a role in that?
So Tractor Supply used to be primarily a circular based marketing platform. We sent out roughly one circular every 2 weeks approximately. We had a time maybe in the summer where we were off ad maybe 3 weeks. So really there isn't a print function. Our print function right now is truly in an in-store collateral perspective, so POP, brochures, that kind of thing, but not in the essence of true out to consumer media pushes.
So more in that store experience.
Correct.
Yeah, makes total sense. And then now I know that you also spent a good part of your early career working in supply chain modeling and other marketing roles. So what aspects of some of those early career challenges have you found is really helping you in marketing operations?
Right. So for me, it's that there's so much more than the design and the print, right? There's so many more considerations. Marketing, when I started to work for that company, it was a relatively unique term, relatively new term in the industry of marketing supply chain. But when you really dig into it, it makes perfect sense. Every aspect of things we do has a supply chain to it. It's the acquisition of raw materials, the ink, the paper, all of that, the distribution model, how you get it from point A to point B. It's looking at it holistically and ensuring that your strategies and timelines are in line with what you can achieve from a supply chain perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And with your marketing operations responsibilities today, you spoke just a moment ago about the importance of process, and the process of creating physical marketing impressions is the same as digital marketing impressions. Clearly, obviously, process is critical to scalability. So can you share some of the sort of secrets that you've learned along the way about how you sort of build out scalable processes with your marketing operations team?
Sure. So when we started to transition from that print heavy model to digital model, one of the things that we realized very quickly that we needed to do was dig into process and process mapping. And it is something that I think gets completely taken for granted because the work ends up getting done anyway, but it doesn't always end up getting done in a way that is comfortable for your teams. So one of the things that we found was investing the time in true process mapping, and not just here and there. We made a collected effort to spend a whole lot of time digging into this. We had one person responsible for it, and there is a direct correlation between process efficiency and morale. When we went through this exercise, we more than doubled our band or our asset creation. We increased it by 203%. And we did not add any more resources, but our output increased that much by that much volume, and the morale went up. People were happier because we defined what that process was at each stage, and on the tail end of that, we did a very extensive RACI process. So, that whole responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, and dug into every single tactic that we could think of and defined who does what. And that changed things internally so much, that gave us that bandwidth that we so needed. People weren't feeling the bogged down burden of all of these last minute tactics because they were so overwhelmed with work because work wasn't being done in a comfortable manner. So it's truly taking the time to dig in and creating that roadmap that people know how to follow, right? And you create those guardrails of how the work gets done, and it gets done much more efficiently.
Sure. Well, and let's build on what you were just talking about from a RACI perspective. So from a RACI perspective, those internal audiences that you just described, how you build those relationships, how you understand the roles and responsibilities, and using RACI as a model to do that. if we flip that around to external, what advice can you give to marketing operations professionals today, just as you're serving those sort of internal audiences? What about serving the multiple external audiences? You're serving external audiences, you're serving multiple channels, you're serving multiple markets. What's some advice that you can give when you're looking outside the organization into the market?
So that's a great question. I think that it's all relative, right? It's that don't go into thinking that because you're transitioning from something that say it's print production and you're evolving it, it's relative. Don't let that stand in your way. Know that a good solid process and understanding them will help you see those relative similarities, and it's not as overwhelming as you think it is, right? It's just that we all get caught up in the day-to-day work and the burden of actual work that we don't sometimes stand back and take that big view and the time to outline the process and what needs to happen. So invest in that. That is my recommendation. Invest in that and know that it's not as different. It's not as overwhelming as you think, and you will find more similarities, and you'll be able to leverage your background to take it elsewhere. And that's something that was, quite frankly, for me as a person, a little unnerving at first. It's like, my background is so heavy in print. Where does that leave me in this newly digital world that we're going to? But it's all relatable. It's new learnings, but my background is still very relatable in what we're doing now. And don't question yourself on that.
Sure. And what I also hear in your comments there too is it's important just to continue to listen. Years ago, the key to success was understanding your customers and being relevant to them. It's the same thing now. It's just that maybe we have more avenues to listen, whether it be social media, whether it be digital, whether it be, physical marketing impressions, et cetera. These are all ways for us to just obviously listen and be there and be relevant.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate your consumer either. I think sometimes we pigeonhole what we think our consumer is. And for instance, we're a heavy farm and ranch company. We think those people rely on that piece of paper showing up at their mailbox, right? And people are more open to these new forms of consuming marketing and information than we may think they are. So don't pigeonhole that customer, right?
Yeah, totally. So Julie, is there something that you would want to improve on as a marketing operations professional?
Oh, for sure. So knowledge and learning always, and it goes back to, my background being primarily in print. So getting to know all of the terminology, right, the technical acumen, what it means, that's where I'm investing a lot of my time right now. And the research, I'm digging into all sorts of online information and absorbing that to better understand the digital world and the new cross-functional teams that I'm dealing with now. So the stuff they talk about, the different types of ad models and things like that. So that is where I'm focusing on right now to help me be a better marketing operations. I don't have to know how to do that stuff, right? But I have to understand what it means so I can help. So I and my team can help support it.
Sure. And is there something that maybe everyone in the industry is trying to do, but maybe you feel you've discovered a better way to do it, or maybe you've decided to do something differently?
So I don't know that there's a specific thing, but one thing that I do and try to do is, and it can be met with pushback, right, on occasion, is I try to insert my team where sometimes it may be perceived as it's not our place, right? So deep involvement cross-functionally for me is a key to that will help benefit and understand operations role in all of these processes, right? So don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask to join the meeting that you may think you're not really a part of or shouldn't have purview into. You do. Understanding the business strategy, understanding the marketing strategy, understanding the digital and omni strategy will help you better understand how to support it from an operations perspective. So don't stay in your lane, don't stay in your lane. And like I said, sometimes you'll get a little pushback, but when you couch it with, it's to help me help you, right? How can I help you? And I can help you better if I understand what you're doing more. So that's the one thing that I tend to do. I don't know if it's that different, but it's really important to me, and I try to impart that onto my team members as well. Get involved. Don't stay in your lane. Understand the other lanes.
Yeah, it's excellent advice, and that's exactly what I was thinking as soon as you were saying that was help me help you. If I can better understand your challenges, what you're going through, I can be a better business partner for you in the organization to get information to you faster, more valuable information, something that's going to help all of us, not just you, not just me, but the overall organization. So I think it's very powerful.
Exactly. And that's the end goal, right? My goal in life as a marketing operations manager is to get the work done without people having to really think about it, right? I don't want my marketing leaders to have to worry about how that work gets done. Let me do that. But to do that, I need to understand what your objectives are. I want to understand your process. I want to understand your vernacular. All of that. So get involved and understand the organization.
Now, is there, or can you provide an example of a mistake or maybe a failure that you have experienced in your career, particularly in the marketing operations space, and maybe what you've learned from that?
I do have, don't we all have those failures? I do.
Usually, yes.
And it always comes down to, and it's cliche, but it's the devil is in the details, right? It is always ask the questions. No question should go unanswered. Try to figure out the questions you don't know to ask. That's the really hard one, right? But the devil is in the details. So spend that time. And it's like, it's the same with our previous conversation, right? It's insert yourself so you know the things to ask. Because something's going to snake bite you, and you just try to eliminate those snakes as much as possible. The mistakes that I've made in my career, some big ones, some that could have, there's one that I think of particularly that could have cost the account I was supporting over $1 million. And it ended up working out fine. But it was one of those details that I glossed over, and it was purely on me. So do not underestimate the value of the fine print, in your own workload.
Yes. Yes. Well, and you talk a bit about the getting snake bit. And what is interesting, I have found, is on one hand there is that notion of trying to protect yourself from a potential failure. But I also remember early in my career, I worked for an organization called Jostens, and one of our earlier CEOs, his name was Bob Burmaster. And I remember being in a conference room with him, and he had the whole company that was there, and he used this phrase, see snake, kill snake, and meaning that it's also something not only to protect yourself, that, to your comment about, don't, prevent the failure, the devil's in the detail, et cetera, don't get snake bit. But it's also, the interesting thing is, by empowering, because I also hear a key theme that I'm hearing, in your insights here, is empowerment. Don't stay in your lane. Get to know the other team members. Understand who the other functional areas are, and because in that process you may uncover, problems or other things, see snake, kill snake, that, you can take that responsibility. And so I love that empowerment theme that you convey.
Absolutely. That is one of the ways that I lead. Coming up in my career, I was very much led with a management style that was empowering. It wasn't I want to make sure I know every single thing you do. I want to make sure you're doing it right. It was giving me the leeway to do my job, potentially make the mistakes right, but learn from them. And that's how I try to lead, is empowering my team. And I think you get people who then take a much greater sense of accountability when you do that, because they know you're relying on them. And I think you will just get such better results with that empowerment, 100%.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. Well, Julie, before we wrap up today's episode, what is the main takeaway you want to share to understand the challenges facing marketing operations executives today?
Don't take the status quo, right? Push the envelope. Make people uncomfortable. Dig deep. Uncover opportunities. Find where those gaps are that if you came in and changed just one little thing could increase efficiency exponentially. So don't keep doing the same thing the same way all the time. Don't do the status quo. That's the biggest thing. Always have the mentality of always on change. Always on change. And change is uncomfortable. People don't like to do that, right? It's very comfortable to just keep doing it the same way, but to continue to evolve and to have a successful operations program, I believe you have to question every step. Why do we do this?
Mm-hmm. That's a powerful insight. Always on change.
Always on change.
Well, this wraps up this episode of The Art of Marketing Operations. Thank you so much for joining us today, Julie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was very fun.
Well, until next time, stay safe, take care, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to The Art of Marketing Operations, brought to you by Taylor. Don't forget to hit subscribe in your favorite podcast player. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and share. Until next time.